product or at the company, just feel free to type in any words that is part of design thinking. Any words that you already heard when we say design thinking? You could probably type some answers if that's possible. Yeah, empathizing definitely, yes, that's a very first point. Empathizing with the customer is the key. I'm glad someone wrote that. Yeah. Anything else apart from empathy for the user? Anything else that you can think of? Out of box thinking, okay. Yeah, definitely yes. So this touches a bit upon your ideation, right?
Yeah, it should be easily adaptive. The product
Okay,
design.
easily adapt. Yes, definitely. Prototyping, yes, definitely getting your hands dirty and trying out things. Yes. Okay, so I do see that people have a fair idea of what is design thinking. So what you said is basically some of the components of design thinking, but the core of design thinking is the users, right? I think the spotlight is on the users itself. So design thinking is a very human-centric approach, right? And this is often used to solve problems in a very creative way. Now, understanding your users, what challenges, problems that the user needs is definitely the very first step in the design thinking process. And once you do that, then you start prototyping and ideating, and then you also test it out, right? So these are some of that we generally do in terms of design thinking. Now, apart from that, the second ask with respect to design thinking is make sure you're ready to try and fail, right? So the quicker you do that, the more iterations you do, the better it is, right? To just try it out in the market. So make sure you do that often as part of design thinking process itself. So some of the key points that you said is definitely there. Empathize. So there are 5 steps, to design thinking, and it generally begins with empathizing. So empathizing is basically understanding your user, right? What are their challenges? What are their needs? What are some of the constraints? So going deep into understanding the user need is definitely the
Meeting.
first step. The second is after you understand the user, then you go about defining the problem statement, defining the personas.
என்ன
I could see some background noise. Sorry. Preeti, could you just mute them? Thank you. Okay. So redefining the problem statement. And once you are clear about the problem statement and who the users are, then you go to the third phase of ideation, right? When this is where you actually collaborate and come up with as many ideas as possible. And after ideation is when you start prototyping. So prototyping could be a very fast and quick way of trying out one of your ideas from the ideation and making sure you also test it out with the users. Now all of these together forms design thinking. Again, this is a non-linear approach. It's not necessary that you have to do all the step sequence 1 2 3 4 5. That's definitely not the key ask of design thinking, but you should definitely start with the very first step of empathizing with the user, understanding them like really well. Okay. And a few most often what also happens is after you understand the users, few of them directly jump into prototyping and testing. There could be different reasons, especially in an entrepreneurial setup, or someone who's just starting up, right? You might not have the luxury of time and money or resources, and hence you might not be able to do all of these steps. But I would still advise that it's good in the users, and at least making sure the problem that you have defined is the right problem, and for the right user. So once you have clarity on these two, then you can probably go back and forth on all of these areas. The other thing that also often happens is the users and empathizing with users. It's not only the first step, but it is a step that that you follow throughout the phase, during defining the problem statement, during ideating, prototyping, or even during testing. You usually talk about only about the users, right? You think about the users, you put yourself into the shoes of the users, and then you try to build a product or a service or whatever it is, right, that you want to do. um, Now let's go deep into each of these 5 steps. I'm going to take some time to talk about it. As I talk through these steps, I'll also try to give some relevant examples that might resonate with you. If there are some interesting things that you have observed elsewhere, please feel free to put it in the chat for others to read as well. Okay, so the first one is empathizing, right? Empathizing is basically trying to have a very deep understanding of your users. So when I'm saying deep understanding, it's not only putting yourself into the shoes of the user, the end user who's going to use your product or service, but maybe try going a step beyond and getting into their life itself, right? Just making sure you spend as much time as possible with them, not having any bias towards any type of users, right? So that is very important. The way we do this is via user research. Now again, I understand that for entrepreneurs or startups who are just starting, you might not have the access to user research or people who do user research. So I would suggest that you could start just understanding and talking to users that you can access directly. Sometimes even we, if we don't have access to the users, we tend to do like surveys, online surveys, or reach out to friends or friends. Things like that could also work. Some in some scenarios you might have access to your research users. And I'm actually hearing echo, so sorry. Okay, I hope it's clear for all of you.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay,
it's
so
clear.
user research is one. Okay, thanks, Preeti. So user research is one of the key thing that is definitely used in terms of empathizing with the user. And there are two important things I generally follow, which is observation. Right, this is very very important. When you get into the setting of the user, you have to observe them keenly as to what they are trying to say, right? And during this phase, it's important to ask lots of why, right? So we generally use this framework of asking five whys continuously, right? If someone is saying okay, why is that a problem, then you ask another why until you reach at a phase where they will give you some other answer. Then you ask another why until there's probably no more answers. So that gives you a very deep insight of what exactly the problem is. So doing this five whys is a very good strategy. And the second thing that I also like is active listening. So by active listening, I mean, just usually what happens, right, when we talk to a user or someone, we generally try to have an answer already, right? We don't really, listen to them keenly and try to understand what they're exactly trying to talk. But in user research, it's very important to be very keen and open about what the user is, telling you, so that you understand about the needs of the users, their problems, what are some of the constraints they have. Okay, you might have observed movies, where you might have observed people showing empathy for each other. There's one movie that usually I get reminded of when I think about empathy, and that's one of Kamal Hassan's movie where he had acted as a doctor. Any idea about what movie that is? You can put it on the chat or maybe just call it out.
Vasul Raja MBBS.
Yes, exactly. Vasul Raja MBBS. Right? So if you notice, there are small aspects in the movie where you can clearly see that he has empathy for the people whom he meets in the hospital. Correct. So starting from the sweeper who's very angry and frustrated and upset that people are walking over the mobbed areas. Right. All he does is he understands the other person's perspective as to why he's getting frustrated and angry, and what he does, he just goes and gives that person a hug, right? So even just taking that small effort to empathize with that person and showing that love and care often takes a long way in this process, right? The second thing that I also like is the way patients are treated as subjects in that movie, right? So the character we call as Anand in that movie, right? He's often referred to as subject, and that's where again Kamal says, how you call him a subject? He has a name, it's Anand, right? So those small little things definitely matters, and that is where empathy plays a very key role. And by empathizing, he also is being able to influence others, and people also try to follow, right, his way of empathizing with people. So that's something I always think about. The other thing is, let's say you, as a persona, you want to target, mothers, for example, right? And you want to do a user research to understand generally about moms. So when you try to reach out or research about these users as mothers, I would suggest that go broader and think about mothers from different perspectives. For example, someone who is a full-time working mom versus someone who's doing a part-time working mom, someone who's working from home, or someone who is taking care of the household and the kids. Someone who's a single mother, someone who's with a very joint family, with a very big family. So you should try and look at different such personas for you, so you get a very good understanding of the different types of users, the different pain points that all of these moms might have in the respective life, right? And it might vary from person to person. So it's good that you go broader, you take time to understand the users, and then you go on to the next step, which is define, right? So all the data that you have collected as part of your user research, you then start collecting them, grouping them, and you start analyzing the data. Okay. And when you do this, you will also try to understand what are the problems and why is that even a problem, right? So you uncover the root cause of the problem. And one key thing that we generally do is the customer journey map. I don't know how many of you would have heard customer journey maps, but basically it is a tool or a framework that we use to understand what a customer would do from start to end. Okay, let's take the example of Uber app, right? I want to book a cab from my home to, let's say, a mall, right? And so what do I do as part of this process, or what are the steps that I take to book a cab and reach that destination? So that we map as a customer journey map with all the activities and the emotion that I might go through during the booking of the cab itself, right? So when I'm booking the cab, my mental state is probably I'm very anxious. I don't know if I'll get the cab on time, if the cab is good or bad. I have no idea, right? But my first most important thing is I should get a cab on time. And maybe once I get the cab and the person tries to call me, or I'm not able to reach the person, then I get frustrated, right? And once I'm inside the cab, then maybe the cab is not really great, again, like not very happy with the quality of service provided, right? So we start mapping the emotional aspect of the customer as he is or she is using your product or service. Okay, so once you have that, you will then understand the root cause of the problem. You can then pick the problem that you want to solve, right? What is the most important problem that you need to solve? And during this phase, you will also redefine the problem statement. Sometimes you might have started with a problem statement. After user research, where you do the deep analysis and understanding the users, you might figure out that the problem statement might need some tweaks to it, right? For example, the mother example that I said, maybe you wanted to consider moms as a persona for your, let's say, product or service, right? But once you start talking to different types of moms, you might figure it out that probably I want to tackle single moms, right? Or the closest other persona that you can think of is working mom. Maybe they share the same set of problems, and those are the people that you want to focus on, which then gives an idea of the persona itself, right? So persona is basically a fictional character based on the user research you did. So user is basically persona. We call them persona so that we give a face, a name, let's say a age, and then you can also talk about what are some of their needs, what are their aspirations, what are some of the pain points, what is it that they want in life. So we look at different aspects, the different templates that you can find online. So you can start defining your personas. Sometimes even in persona you can have like a primary persona, right, which is your target persona. Let's say 80% of the users fall into this bucket, so they are the primary persona. So when you start thinking about the solution, you should start with your primary persona and not the edge cases personas, though you might target them after you build a very basic framework of the problem that you want to solve. Okay. Identifying the problem statement and identifying the persona is very key in this phase. And once you know the what problem you want to solve and for whom, okay, then it becomes easy for you to figure out how can you solve the problem, which then takes you to the third phase, ideation. So I think most
But
of you know ideation. Yeah.
ma'am, if you're sharing a screen, we are not seeing it.
Is it okay? Preeti, I've been sharing this all this way.
Whether you stopped it in the middle to make it.
No, and okay, let me share again. Sorry about that. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know when
That's fine.
you guys last seeing my screen. Okay. So then after you understand the persona and the problem statement, you go about ideating, right? I think this is something that most of you probably do. But what you could probably do more often is making sure that you have a mix of people who are part of this ideation phase, right? The more number of people you have, apart from the number, I think the different backgrounds that these guys might have as part of ideation is very critical. So I usually pull folks who are developers, QAs, project managers, even other designers, sometimes even marketing. If they need to be part of the brainstorming session, I include all of them as part of ideation, and I divide them into groups. The different creative ideas that you get when you put people from different backgrounds is really amazing, right? And that is how you start creating very unique or innovative or breakthrough ideas. What it also does is during this ideation, you will also force yourself to think outside the box, right? You will also start challenging some of the common assumptions, right? And few techniques that we use is what if, for example, right? What, for example, let's say, okay, a kid needs to go to the school, right? What if the school is not needed, right? He can just simply learn from anywhere at any time, right? So if you change the what if statement, the solution that you will arrive at might be completely different from the ordinary. So it's very important to just maybe flip the problem statement and change the problem statement otherwise, so that you come up with creative solution. And how might we is also another good technique that you can use. Based on the problems that you have collected, you can start putting how might we statements. For example, how might we make the process of let's say paying tax much easier, right? How might we ensure that we pay tax on time, right? Or how might we ensure that the tax we paid is actually getting back to us in terms of good road and good infrastructure, right? So making sure that you have like a how might we problem statement will also help you ideate better, and also collaborate more. The other technique that I use is the collaborative sketching, right? And again, here, mix of people from different walks of the life, you split into groups and you give them a problem statement, the same problem statement, and then you ask them to come up with different, ideas of solution itself. This is again a very good way to bring everyone on the same page, so that everyone across the organization or across your core team understands the user persona, what problem you are trying to solve, so that everyone the company, right? So there is, what do you say, no confusions as to for whom are we solving the problem or what is the problem, right? So those two questions will be out of the head. This is very good when teams are working in silos to do this collaborative sketching often. Okay, especially developers will start appreciating or developing things from a user perspective, right? So they'll try to make it very simple and not technically challenging for the end user to use. So this gives a very good way for us to appreciate each other. Okay. And after you ideate, basically prototype is where you pick maybe the best of a couple of ideas, and then you could come up with an on a prototype itself, right? Completely new prototype. This is a completely experimental phase. The trick is to do it very quickly and not take too much of time prototyping. We often try to do paper prototyping. Basically what it means is you just simply draw it in a paper and pencil, and you just share with the users, and then get some feedback. That's the quickest and dirtiest way of validating your prototype or your idea, is to just sketch it out and then share it back. Sometimes developer will also work on an MVP of sort, where they just have the work done and then you feed. So the sooner that you do on this the prototype, the better it is to get back, which leads to the final phase, the testing phase. So you can actually take the hand-drawn sketches itself to the end user, and get some really good feedback from the user, right? And this is a easy way to test whether your assumptions or the problem statement that you understand, the target personas that you have, whether it will solve the problem or not. Okay, the key is to get early feedback with the user. Don't wait until you get everything right and perfect, because that is never going to happen. The more you delay reaching out to the user, the more costlier it is going to get for you. Okay, so the sooner you reach out to the users, it's advisable to get early. And even after this, you can go of the previous stages, you think, okay, we out of the user testing, you feel that okay, I probably didn't understand the user very clearly. Then you can go back to the user, talk to them, and figure out maybe the problem is completely something, right? So you could do all of that. Okay. Okay. After all of these steps, I think it's good to just give a video. Few of you might have seen given the easy access to Instagram and all of that, right? But this is one video where you could probably see how a common problem could be solved by thinking completely differently, by adding an angle of fun. Okay, so I'm just going to play this video. Let me know if you are able to see this video and also hear it well.
Okay.
Can you see this video?
It is not playing. It is loading.
Okay, let me know if you can.
Yeah, it is audible and it is playing.
Okay.
So this was the problem statement, right? Can we get more people to choose the stairs by making it fun to do?
Definitely, bro. Then I had made to download and
Okay, so you might have observed some of the key things that I just told in the previous slides about first observing, right, how users actually use staircases or the escalator and why people are not using staircases, right? So basically observing the behavior of people, and you want to encourage them to use the steps, right? Quickly go back and you think about some solutions, right? They come up with ideas. Let's say to do it, one of the think of is okay, I would probably give someone a coupon as soon as they reach the top of the stairs, for example. So that way the group could have come with a number of ideas, and one of the idea that they probably picked was to make it fun, right, and enjoyable by anyone of any age, right? So if you notice, starting from kids to pet animals, to older people, everyone wanted to try it out. So it sort of caters to all ages, right? Because there's a factor of fun, right? And you're actually touching the happiness factor of that user, right? And you feel happy after you take that stairs where you're actually playing music as you go, and it's very funny when people walk and go, right? So that is something that I felt was interesting to share with this group. I hope you could also enjoy the same thing. Okay, so going back to the 5 steps that I just said, it's also important to have a divergent and a convergent thinking, right? A divergent is basically you go broader in few cases and then you start converging where you narrow down. Okay, so when you start with empathy or the user research, right? You want to discover more about your users, you want to discover more about the problem. So the more user research and the discovery you do, which is you're going broader or you're diverging, the better it is to get so much of insights. Now after you finish that phase, you then go about defining the problem statements, right, where you want to start narrowing down. So you synthesize your data, you understand the users, and then you also start looking at the persona itself. So you're defining the persona and the problem statement. So at this point you have a clear idea of the problem statement, and also the persona for whom you want to solve the problem, right? At this point, again, what you should be doing is you go broader, which is, you diverge and then you ideate, right? This is where again you generate as many ideas as possible. The key is again to not have any constraints, not to make fun of any ideas that people might come up with. Be very open minded about any ideas, whatever, however funny it is, and not think about any constraints like technical challenges, money, or whatever it is. Just be very open about ideas. And once you have a bunch of ideas, you again start narrowing down, and that is where you put few of the constraints. For example, time could be a constraint, money could be a constraint, resources could be a constraint. So with the limited amount of time, resource, or money you might have, you then again start thinking about a solution. Okay, so the importance is to have this divergent and convergent thinking throughout this design thinking process that I just shared in few of the slides. Okay. Okay. So since most of you are from startup, right? How can you get started with design thinking? Of course, you can do all of those 5 steps, which is definitely to begin with, understanding the users. Few other things that you could also do, right? First is don't overanalyze anything, right? More often, even in our team, what we end up doing is we spend lots of time analyzing a problem and then just overthinking and not really acting fast. So the key is to start acting fast, just trying it out very quickly and not overthink or overanalyze on anything. The second thing is making sure you put user at the center of everything you do, right? Since this is a very user centric process, the idea is you think about the user at every step of your decision making process. The more you put your money on the user, the more you start thinking about the problem you want to solve, right? So you want to solve the problem with the amount of money that you have. So you'll focus on the most important problem, right? When you start putting the user at the center of everything you do. That's the second thing. The third is making sure that there are definitely areas which are completely unknown, very ambiguous. It's okay that things are not clear in the beginning, so just embrace that uncertainty. Okay, and as you learn and as you try out things, which is the first step, you will probably come to a place where you will pivot, or you might even go the other way around, opposite to what you first began with, right? It's okay to do that and pivot and adopt as you go. So don't feel bad to just go back to the first step of solutioning or redefining a problem statement at any point. Okay, just feel free to just do the whole process again if needed be. Okay, and I think this is not new. You should definitely try and fail, right? But make sure you understand the failures. It's you understand how someone's succeeded, or why your product is better than other products, right? So it's good to learn from both failures and success. In my previous organization, ThoughtWorks, we used to have this I think monthly or quarterly session where people will really come and talk about failures, right? And that was completely encouraged, because where people are comfortable talking about why they failed, how they failed, what they learned from it. What it did was it gave others the confidence to try out things and fail and learn fast. Okay, fail fast and learn quickly is the key, right? So it's good to do that. So make sure you also share some of your failures with others and see how you can do better. Again, go back to pivot and adopt if the need be. And finally, the most important bit is the impact on the users that your product or services might have. Value that the user gets out of using a product or services is going to be very, very important. Let's say someone gives you $10 for a subscription, right? But the value that they get out of is, let's say, equivalent to $15, right? Then there are high chances that people will continue to use your product, right? So don't really match your value and cost to the users. Going beyond the user expectation is the key here, right? How do you keep them happy? Even small areas where you could improve, bring a smile on faces is very important. That goes a long way in probably gaining more such users for you. Okay. Okay, so I have a couple of case studies also that I wanted to share today. I'm just taking if your time. Okay, I will probably just rush through because there might be some questions from your end. So one of the case study is the Jeevan Bindi example. Now In India, again, design thinking has been there for like a long time. Design thinking is not only applicable to product or services, right? As we saw in the staircase example, it was also applied in a normal urban scenario. Even when the example is about women in rural India where they have iron deficiency, okay, and because of iron deficiency, women often have problem of goiter or breast cancer or few other issues. So the government wanted to sort of uh, make sure that this problem is addressed. But since most of them belong to rural India, they were reluctant to use the English medicine that we generally use, right? Tablets was not something that these guys were comfortable using with. So the organization came, they understood that there is this mental block of not adopting to your usual tablets, and hence the idea that they came up with was using iodine. Since iodine can be via skin, they wanted to add iodine as part of the bindi. The bindi is basically the book that we keep, right? So what they did is iodine is part of this bindi. So people, the women generally put it there, and it definitely reduced it a bit. I won't say this was like completely successful, but the thinking was how can we make it easily accessible to the end users with their constraints that they had of using English medicine. So this was a very good example where the Stephen Bindi became a very good design thinking example in that way. Okay. The other example is just a simple also try. Okay. So I think this was in rural Maharashtra where people were very reluctant to use vaccines, and this was a very small community where there was a very unique language that was spoken. I think around only 6 lakh people were speaking that language, and not everyone who were all the health officials from the primary healthcare center who were reaching out to these folks, they were not they were not able to communicate with them because they didn't know the language, right? So one of the doctor from the primary healthcare center actually learned that language for them and was able to clearly convince them about the advantage of using the vaccine, right? And once he started doing that, people in the community started to consider him as part of the community itself, and slowly he was able to influence other local politicians in that area, and then the adoption of vaccine in that specific area increased, right? So if you actually look at the problem is, it's not that people don't uh, want to take vaccine. The problem is because they didn't feel they were being part of the community because they were already a small set of users. So I think this doctor did an excellent job of learning that language to make sure talk to them, understand them better, and once they know that you're invested in solving the problem for them, right, they will be open to exploration, right? So I think that was the key of this specific story. There are definitely some failure stories also. One of the failure stories that I wanted to share was Nokia, right? So how many of you have used this phone?
I used it.
Okay. Yeah, I think 80s mostly would have used this 1100 Nokia phone, isn't it? And I used to be like a very big fan of this phone because of the physical shape of the phone, and no matter from where I throw it, it never broke, right? And it always used to be better in terms of phone quality, right? But where did they fail, right? So if we look at where they failed, right, when things were changing, Nokia continued to focus on the hardware, right? They didn't go with the market insight where people were moving away from hardware. I think that is when your iOS and Android was coming in, right? Samsung came into the picture, but Nokia stuck to that thought that no, we will focus on hardware. We will try to improve the screen size here, and then we'll try to make the button more clickable or maybe make it more bigger, right? So I think they focused on the wrong item, and then hence they lost the share of the market completely to other folks, which is your iPhone and all the Samsung that you see. But iPhone was revolutionary in that term because what they gave was completely a touch interface, something which was very new, very unique at that time, and the adoption that you see now is like really high. Okay, so this was definitely one of the failure story that we could all relate to, right? I just wanted to make sure that making those key decisions, thinking about your market is as important as you understand the user. So in this generation, I think with the so many digital transformations happening, so many technical transformations happening, right? It's important to see what is happening in the outside world, what technologies are coming in, and making sure you also incorporate those technologies as part of the products and services. Now, all this AI and chatbot is like super, useful for all of us, right? Instead of thinking it as a challenge or as a constraint, how do you make sure you use that as part of your process in decision making, in problem solving, and also catering to this users who are so very tech savvy these days, right? So it's good to just catch up on the market side as well. So that is why I wanted to share this specific story. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop the presentations and open the floor for any questions that you might have. Any questions that you want to share? Okay, okay, maybe you could probably say if there are some what do you say, a design thinking that you guys have done. I saw some 10% of you said you do use design thinking somehow, right? So how did you guys go about solving a problem or thinking about the user?
So can I go? I just
Yes.
Yeah. So presently, we just came up with a project that we want to build augmented reality training for the non-technically, like women who are not technically educated. They have a little bit of education, not engineering, not technically, to do the manufacturing assembly, right? So what we felt is that we thought, okay, first thing, what we felt is that I am the person like that. What are the things?
Mhm.
And why the person who is building for that employee, what is the major motto of him? So these are the two things we first focus on.
Mhm.
First, we focus on the client. The client said these are the things that have been given. So what are the solution we can build it across? Okay, will the solution help that end user complete the task? So that is empathizing, not only the end user, the client. Right. After that, we come up with like a list of features and everything. Then after that, we came into the customer persona that they don't know that much English. So cut down so many instructions. Everything should be shown visually like 3D models. Then secondly, it need to be across like 13, 14 workstations where different assemblies will be done. So we cannot build one single app and give it to them and just come back. Right? We just figured out, okay, these are the things need to be done. Then we ideated, okay, how the final how the final UI will look, what are the things they actually need. When we proposed the UI, they said, okay, this is what we need. And the additions, like you need to add next step. If it goes wrong, you should blink a red light. So after empathizing, after defining will it work or not, we can come up with a solution or idea. The idea for the solution of about 50 to 70%. And we always follow the rule that we are not going to give everything to our client. We are going to keep some space, a room for discussion. We say, this is what we can do. This will give you this result. But do you need anything extra? So in ideation, we have a 30% gap, 70%. When we build on the prototype, deployment strategies and everything. In the 30% room, we can add on or separate. Once a prototype is complete, you can have 100% full-fledged idea into outcome. Then you can build it out after testing. So this is how we are working now. And this is how we worked earlier for the other projects too.
Okay, but you don't have access to the users, as you said, right? So the requirements came from the clients directly, isn't it?
Yes, but we went there. We went there. We then we talk how the users would be and everything. After seeing them, talking to the users only, we come up at least defining the problem.
Got it. Got it. That is the
Talk
key,
to
right?
both clients and user. Yeah.
Correct, correct. That's the key. But sometimes what also happens is you might not have access to the users, right?
Yes.
The the problem statement might sometimes come from the stakeholders itself or from the clients directly, and they will be reluctant to for you to go talk to the their customers
Yeah.
directly, right?
At that point,
Sometimes,
what we make, we create a list of questions. See, if I
mm-hmm,
give this problem, this may affect. If I give this solution, this will not be fulfilled.
mm-hmm,
Right? If I am a lady, I may accept these things and all. And finally we ask the question, what you imagine, because they deal with the users daily, right? So we ask the question, what you imagine, you feel the perfect thing. You can give it to them. From that, we raise so many questions and get to know the users, how they work.
got it, got it. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Okay, there's someone else who wanted to share a failure story. Suraj, I guess.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Uh, Ma'am, first of all, amazing informative webinar, ma'am. So I'm a final year graduate actually. So through my academics, we have built a product for onion farmers, ma'am. Like we build,
Okay.
we build a cold storage for onion farmers, but eventually,
Mm-hmm.
we just started while we were building that product. We just had a initial problem statement from consumer and food affairs of government. Through that
Okay.
problem statement, we started to build the product, and we got some uh, college funds and gone for some competition, won some competitions.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that it will be a
يعني back area عارف area
uh, I'm sorry. We thought it will be it's a amazing product. We can go for another prototype. Like we have built a prototype. We thought that we have we are right now testing right now. We thought that we can
Mm-hmm.
go for the another prototype. But eventually, right now we started to uh, went to some farmers, talked about them, and we found that they won't even buy our product because it's
Okay.
so the way the what we build is we build a cold storage for onions, okay, where we can store the onions for a particular period of the month. Through that particular period of month, those onions won't get rotten. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
our product is about. So
Mm-hmm.
we went to the farmers, talked to some of the farmers, and we eventually found out that they won't even buy our product because it's some expensive, and the way they store their onions right now in their field is eventually different. Uh,
Correct.
so right now we are starting from fresh. That's my failure story. And I have a doubt also. Can I share that too, ma'am?
Sure, sure. Go on.
Ma'am, my idea is like my thinking is that how we can effectively communicate to farmers, ma'am. I particularly Tamil Nadu, anywhere in the Indian state, but uh, how we can effectively communicate to the farmers, and let's say how can we make a farmer to buy a product, ma'am? They won't understand the new technology. Like we are building IoT technology, like how I should communicate better way to install my product to their field, ma'am.
Right, right. So for that, I think again you have to understand the farmers, right? So when you talk to the farmers, you have to look at their background, right? How much of earning capacity they have, right? Because if they have to shell out some money from their earnings, right? So there definitely there is a block, right? I only earn, let's say, 1,000 per day, right? But the
Yeah,
cost
ma'am.
of the product is much higher than that. Why would someone go and buy that, right? So there has to be a real value for buying a product which might not fit inside their what do you say,
The
buying
budget.
uh, exactly, right, buying band. So based on that, definitely that's a key factor that you might have to consider. But what you could also do is there like any other innovative solution that you can think about, right, without putting the burden on the farmer? Can you seek help of, let's say, some other government organizations which is already doing something very similar? Can you partner with them, for example? right? So just think from different perspectives and see if there are different ways to solve the problem rather than just focusing and working on one solution. Also getting to know the farmers very deep and see if there are other ways to solve the problem, right? But
Okay. Yeah.
really thinking about how much of budget they have to spend and buy is important, correct? If you're actually fixing the technology and then you want to drive change, then that might not happen in most of the cases, right? Your solution should be around the farmers. If they are your target personas, and they should be able to willing to spend that much of amount, right, to buy the product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, but thank you so much for sharing the story with this group. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, there was also someone who had asked for any useful links. I generally follow IDEO. I'm going to put it on the chat here. IDEO is a very good company in terms of design thinking. You can just Google and find IDEO. There are lots of interesting articles, different design thinking approaches they use. Very creative way of solving problems. There are also lots of articles on how you can run brainstorming sessions and lots of different stuff. So please go through that for more things. Okay. I don't know if Chandrika, your hand is up. I don't know if you have a question that you wanna share. Okay, if not, I have one more small story that I can share. I know we're almost on time. So most of you would be knowing about Airbnb, right? But when Airbnb started, they were not making so much of revenue. Okay, so they were, trying to take photos from people who want to rent out the space, and they were like earning, I guess, very less per month. I think $200 or something per week. Sorry. Okay, and it was not definitely sufficient. So they took a step back and they tried to understand why there are not many customers taking their using the service and rent and booking those rented places. And they figured out that the quality of the images that is there on the website, right, that was taken by the owner of the house, right? So obviously whatever camera, whatever light they had, they just simply took random photos, and it was not really great looking photos, where as a consumer I'm interested in renting, in just taking that money, like spending that money for that property. So what they did is they went to one of the location. Three of them went to a location with a very good quality, camera. They hired a camera, and then they went about shooting the property in a very good light with the actual typical photography format, and they posted those improvised photos or better quality photos on the website. Within a week, they saw the amount double. So from 200 in a week, they started earning 400. So they understood that it is not about technology or this, but the quality of the photo also mattered, and hence they wanted to improve. Even that led to Airbnb, and they are one of the best known startup companies that you can look at, right? So definitely that was again another inspiring story, where thinking outside of the box and solving the problem from a different perspective without the use of technology or anything really helped grow their business. Yeah. Okay. Anyone wants to share anything? We're almost on time. Otherwise, no.
Yeah, I think that's it from everyone's side.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you again. Thank you so
Thank you so
much for
much,
joining
ma'am.
us today. Thanks, Preeti. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, if anyone else have any question, please write to us at mentor@startupian.in. I'll get the answers from ma'am and share it with you.
Sure. Thanks, Preeti. Thank you. Bye.
So, bye everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.